How's it going, everyone? I'm Jacob with channel Frederator, and today we're taking a look at some of the reasons that Rick has such a notorious reputation. And there's no doubt that he's a wanted man. I mean, if we're going by the Season 2 finale, we're gonna be listing this dude's infractions for a long while. We could probably go on forever if we wanted to, but for now, here are 10 things that would get Rick Sanchez locked up that we've seen so far. And before we get started, make sure to subscribe to channel Frederator and click the bell icon to become part of our notification squad. Let's start off with some of his smaller offenses, like destroying an embassy and aggravated murder. Rick Sanchez plays by his own rules. Once he sets his sight on something, nothing in this reality or the next can stand in his way. Not even the Galactic Federation. Well, can you blame him? Well, yes, very much so. He's an unstoppable genius with unlimited realities in the palm of his hand, but unfortunately, Rick tends to get a little carried away, often pushing the limits of science and morality. For a wanted intergalactic criminal like Rick, murder can happen pretty much any day of the week. Still, in the Season 3 episode Pickle Rick, the body count is crazy even for him. And that's not even counting the slew of sewer rats and cockroaches he kills. We're talking about the entire unnamed, possibly Russian embassy that Rick just so happens to wipe out. Suffice to say, they messed with the wrong pickle. So while some of these bad guys may have had it coming, the fact of the matter is, once Rick got started, he never stopped, even when his victims were begging for their lives. It's especially dark considering all of the work the show did to humanize these men, like showing their family photos. Even so, Rick proceeded to blow up the entire building, sending everyone to their death. And while that's super messed up, it's also aggravated murder, which carries a sentence of mandatory life imprisonment with a minimum 30 years without parole. Of course, the worst part is that Rick wasn't even in human form at this time, which means it would be impossible to pin him as a suspect. But if there's one thing that we know for sure, it's that destroying an entire government facility should get you locked up for life. Creating and enslaving an alien race. Rick is a known threat to the planet. Actually, no, not just the planet, the whole universe. Multiverse, even. But he's also done some pretty messed up stuff on a smaller scale. During the Season 2 episode, The Ricks Must Be Crazy, Rick created an evolved alien civilization with a microverse that he concealed inside of a battery. Sure, it sounds pretty impressive, but that's not the messed up part. He shrinks himself, travels inside the battery, and convinces the microverse citizens that they have to constantly move on these platforms to generate kinetic energy to power their city. I mean, when I say it out loud, it just kinda sounds like slavery with extra steps. But wait, it gets even more messed up. Once their top scientist, Zeep Zanflorp, voiced by Stephen Colbert, discovers an alternate form of energy via the Teenyverse, a microverse inside the microverse, Rick threatens to wipe them out. Just when you think Rick can't get any more selfish, he continues to surprise you. Oh, also, that's genocide on a massive scale. If you ask me, or any citizen of the microverse, that's definitely worth getting locked up for. Rick's charges would fall under crimes against humanity and attempted genocide. Held to our standards, he would go on trial at the International Court of Justice and answer to the United Nations for these crimes. There's no definitive punishment for the crime, so we'd have to let the United Nations deal with him as they see fit. Messing with time. Now this one almost did get Rick locked up. In the Season 2 premiere, A Wrinkle in Time, Rick freezes time for half a year just so he, Morty, and Summer can take their time cleaning up the house after an epic Ricksy business party destroyed it in the Season 1 finale. The problem here is that there are major consequences when you mess with time. For example, if you're feeling indecisive, the timeline can split over and over again. Apparently, Rick gained the ability to manipulate time by obtaining time crystals through illegal means. Of course, there are these fourth-dimensional beings that function as time police. They keep people like Rick in check to prevent crimes against time. They find Rick, fix the timeline, and attempt to take Rick into some sort of time prison, but then Rick does what geniuses always do, and he outsmarts the time police by resplitting the time into a whole whack of different timelines. He then reunites the timelines into one using time-stabilizing collars, successfully eluding the being and saving himself and his grandkids from an interdimensional prison. According to the fourth-dimensional being in the episode, theft of time-freezing crystals results in a life sentence in time prison, and for a time prison, I can't help but wonder how long they consider life to be. Building unlicensed theme parks inside a human body. As awesome as this one sounds, it just ain't right. In the Season 1 episode Anatomy Park, Rick exploits a poor homeless man by trapping his illnesses in cages and placing them on display for another ill-fated microscopic business venture. It's basically Jurassic Park meets The Fantastic Voyage, only completely unethical. It goes without saying that Anatomy Park was not a sustainable business model because the homeless man eventually dies due to deteriorating health. But even if he hadn't died, it definitely wasn't legal, and we're almost positive it could be considered a crime against humanity. But regardless on your stance here, it's apparent that this was a pretty bad investment. Rick is lucky to have simply cut his losses rather than getting locked up for such a deranged deed, though, to be honest, I'd probably still go to Anatomy Park. In this case, Rick would most likely be facing charges of at least fraud and involuntary manslaughter. Most criminal fraud offenses are considered felony crimes and are punishable by jail, fines, probation, or all of the above. And even though involuntary ordinary manslaughter is treated as a less serious crime than murder, it could still result in prison time and other penalties. Destroying the world as we know it. Well, this one's a no-brainer. For any diehard Rick and Morty fan, one of the most epic episodes of the series is Season 1's Rick Potion number 9, when Rick inadvertently brings about the end of days. Even geniuses make mistakes once in a while, but for Rick, a simple miscalculation costs him and his family life as they know it. So what's a scientist supposed to do when he accidentally transforms most of the people on this planet into monstrous Freudenbergs? Well, leave the planet, I guess. Not only does Mr. Sanchez destroy the world, but he also leaves it behind. He jumps into an alternate reality where he and Morty have already died so that they can resume their lives as if nothing happened. And that's not even the worst part. He leaves the rest of the family behind, including his own daughter, who does manage to make a lovely, if barbaric, home for her family in the apocalypse, getting along just fine without Rick, but still, this is one mistake we will never forget. Considering this crime affected the entire world, it's another case of our good friend crimes against humanity. The United Nations would have to get involved, but since they're probably all Freudenbergs at this point, they would probably just eat him or something. Sawing superheroes. The Season 3 episode Vindicators 3, The Return of Worldender, shows us just how spiteful Rick can be, and just how low he'll stoop to get even with whoever did him wrong, even if it's a team of powerful superheroes sworn to protect the universe. As we previously mentioned, murder is a cakewalk for any chaotic neutral super genius with an endless list of enemies, especially Rick, but the actual murder isn't why this episode makes the list. It's how and why he chooses to end the Vindicators. During a drunken stupor, Rick sets up a massive series of murderous puzzle traps for the Vindicators to solve, not unlike the Saw series. Unfortunately, the only one who sees through it is Morty, who just so happens to be accustomed to these kinds of randomized drunken trivia games from his alcoholic grandpa. And at the end of it all, the Vindicators are no more, and a giant celebration was set up the night prior to celebrate Rick's inevitable victory over the superheroes. So not only did he wipe out an entire super team, but he did it rather creatively and intoxicated nonetheless. The only question remaining is, why did he choose to kill them off one by one? And the answer is simple: to send a pretty clear message to anyone out there who may not like him. So because Ghost Train and the guy made Vance died by the hands of Supernova, who remains at large, that's 2 counts of aggravated first-degree murder for Rick, resulting in a double life sentence without parole. Being a danger to children. In the Season 3 episode, The ABCs of Beth, our eyes are opened exactly to how much damage has been done as the result of Rick being a less than perfect role model for Beth in her formative years. Rick claimed that his daughter was scary as a child, often wanting Rick to create dangerous science experiments that would put the other children in harm's way. So in order to curb her murderous tendencies, Rick created an alternate dimension for Beth called Froopyland. Froopyland is filled with lovable creatures to keep Beth company throughout her childhood. Unfortunately, this plan backfires and Beth ends up attempting to murder her childhood friend Tommy in Froopyland during a jealous rage. In the present, Rick confronts Beth about her memories of Froopyland and the disappearance of Tommy. The two travel to Froopyland to discover Tommy is still alive, but he's living a horrifying existence. He's sustained himself by eating the Froopy creatures and claiming to be their king. Naturally, Beth feels responsible, but in her attempts to rescue Tommy, she snaps and goes on another murderous rampage. She returns to the ordinary world with his finger so Rick can clone Tommy so that he can finally return to his family. It's a dark moment for Beth, and it doesn't exactly paint Rick as the best parent. This is a case of emotional child abandonment, meaning Rick put in minimal effort as a parent. Most states classify child abandonment as a felony, resulting in the relinquishing of all rights and responsibilities to the child. There's also a potential charge for helping conceal Tommy's kidnapping/murder. Rick can be charged as an accessory after the fact or for aiding and abetting, since he took actions to conceal the crime and help Beth avoid capture. This is considered a felony and would result in a prison sentence. Selling super weapons. Season 2, Episode 2, Morty Night Run, introduced us to one of the most lovable yet short-lived characters of the series, the assassin Crumbopulous Michael. It also shed some light on a rather shady facet of Rick's life, the fact that he makes and sells super weapons to alien assassins. But why would Rick do something as depraved as selling super weapons? Well, he wanted to use his profits at Blitz and Chits, an alien arcade. Morty tries to right Rick's wrongs by protecting Crumbopulous Michael's target, Fart, which of course results in an unintentional bloodbath. Eventually, Morty realizes he was better off not getting involved and kills Fart himself after realizing its intention is to wipe out all of humanity. So in this instance, Rick's selfish intent was justified, but he still sold super weapons to a guy that kills people. Possession and selling of a dangerous weapon is a gross misdemeanor punishable with up to 1 year in jail and or fines of up to $5,000. But since Crumbopulous Michael is a known assassin, this could be considered accessory to aggravated first-degree murder, a felony resulting in yet another 15-year prison sentence. Smuggling megaseeds. In the first episode of Season 1, Rick attempts to talk Morty into smuggling megaseeds through intergalactic customs, and he'd be smuggling them the old-fashioned way up inside his butt. It's shady of Rick to put his grandson on the line, but as the series goes on, we learn that that's pretty much the entire reason Rick keeps Morty around anyway. He basically uses Morty as a human shield or guinea pig, even if it means taking the kid out of school and ruining any hopes he had of living a normal life, and that alone would probably already get you thrown in prison. It's It's not exactly explained why the seeds are illegal, but if smuggling seeds in your grandson isn't enough, the several federal guards Rick manages to kill in the process make for a clear case that he should be locked up. This one's a little tricky because we don't exactly know why these seeds are illegal, but let's assume it was a drug thing. I mean, we are talking about Rick here. Possession of drug paraphernalia is a misdemeanor and is punishable by a mandatory minimum of 1 day in jail and a minimum fine of $250. The maximum penalty for possession of drug paraphernalia is 90 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. Then, of course, there are several counts of aggravated first-degree murder. That's another life sentence for every federal guard that Rick and Morty managed to shoot down. More space drugs. In the season 1 finale, Ricksy Business, Rick takes a house party to another dimension and then lies to Morty about needing Calaxian crystals to travel back. Morty and Nancy put their lives on the line to retrieve these crystals for Rick, and Adolf Linkler actually dies in the process, only to discover that the crystals weren't needed to travel back home at all. Instead, Rick crushes them, snorts them, and gets high as hell, proceeding to do the self-proclaimed Rick dance to keep the party going. Then, in the season 2 episode Autoerotic Assimilation, we're introduced to a hive-minded alien ex-girlfriend of Rick's by the name of Unity. Right away, it's revealed that the two are a terrible match. But in the episode, we see Rick mix some unfamiliar ingredients to concoct a party drug liable to spice up their night. It was basically the sci-fi equivalent to cooking meth, and we're 100% sure that that's gotta be a big no-no in just about every federally regulated galaxy out there. In this case, Rick would be charged with drug manufacturing and would be guilty of a Class B felony facing imprisonment for up to 10 years. If the crime involved 2 or more kilograms of the drug, then he would be fined up to $100,000 for the first 2 kilograms and imprisoned as well. But knowing Rick, that's just the tip of the iceberg, and there's no doubt future seasons will bring even more reasons Rick should have stayed in that intergalactic prison. I'm Jacob with Channel Frederator, and thanks for watching 10 things that would get Rick Sanchez locked up. What do you think has been Rick's worst crime ever? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to like this video and click the bell icon to become part of our notification squad. And of course, make sure to subscribe, because remember, Frederator loves you.